Well. We're back, and it's just, I don't know. Some of this stuff is just straight comedy. I just want you all to gather around. I want you guys to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Blah, blah, blah. You know? ACC Media Days in parallel or in contrast to the SEC Media Days. Of course, most of these media days don't occur at the same time. It wouldn't make sense. But either way, before we get, let's get some housekeeping going. Go ahead and subscribe to the Auburn Fanatics podcast with your host, the one and only Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn, aka Kennard Vernon Stewart. As we talk about the ACC Media Days, there's a lot of SEC ACC interconnectivity. If you hear a little background, I'm doing my famous Gregory Lawrence is one of my subscribers. He calls it the CarCast. I just wasn't able to get stationary, but trust me, man, this is a safe way to do it. It's hands free. I'm not putting myself or anyone else in danger here. But I wanted to go ahead and come on because as the night goes on, I may not be able to do so. And my goal for this particular fiscal year of Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn and Auburn Fanatics podcast is I just want to, give you guys a little bit more consistent content. Now that we've gotten all of that stuff out of the way, I told you guys about the interconnectivity of the ACC, the SEC from a coaching standpoint. There's a lot of cross-contamination, if you will. Of course, Rhett Lashley, the head coach for Southern Methodist University, better known as SMU, who made the playoffs last year, by the way, in their first year, Rhett Lashley is their head coach. He was actually the offensive coordinator at Auburn. A lot of you guys may remember, some of you may not. He was at Auburn first stint, 2009, 2010, as a graduate assistant for a team that went bowl bound in 2009, and then subsequently the infamous 2010 glorious national championship year for the Auburn Tigers. Rhett Lashley also was the offensive coordinator for the Tigers and did a damn good job, which kind of parallels with Gus Malzahn, who we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. Did a good job. I mean, he was actually up for the Broyles Award as an offensive coordinator with arguably one of the best offenses in Auburn history. One of the better quarterbacks in recent Auburn history in Nick Marshall. He actually had the opportunity to be side by side with Nick Marshall and Cam Newton. I think that's a pretty good resume to say you've coached these guys and you've probably learned some from these guys because, hell, when he was coaching Cam Newton, he wasn't that much older than Cam Newton. He was a kid, basically, a graduate assistant. But either way, Rhett Lashley took some stabs at the SEC. Hey, they're a top-heavy conference, and like I said before, they might be. I've had this argument before because, especially during Alabama's tenure, I'm like, that tenure with Nick Saban where they were just running through everyone, it just appeared that Alabama was that team, and then you had everybody else. You had Auburn that might trip up and beat them every now and then, but the gap started to kind of close as Kirby Smart entered the conference, and the conference got a lot more competitive, and it's definitely a lot more parity in the conference now that you have Oklahoma and Texas, which is absolutely incredible. I don't know how they would expand the conference even more, but I just don't think, as far as a mega power conference, the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, I think that's kind of monumental for a conference, and I think that's a bold move by both of the teams and the conference itself to make that type of addition. And I think the addition made sense from a geographical standpoint. Oklahoma, especially, I'll say this, especially with Texas, because most of the alumni base for many of the Southeastern Conference teams, they live in Dallas, they live in San Antonio, they live in Houston, they live in Texas. You might not know, I mean, I'm not sure. I haven't done the math. They might live in Oklahoma, but I know Texas for sure is a spot. I guarantee you, I guarantee you, at a certain point, I'm telling you, Auburn and the Texas Longhorns are going to play one another here in the near future. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost certain that the first time they play each other as conference mates, they've actually played before. Matter of fact, they had a home-to-home series, if I remember right, in the mid to late '80s. But I guarantee you, Auburn against Texas. Oh man, you got the Auburn folks that live in Texas. You got the Auburn folks that are willing to travel. I don't care if Auburn has a game in the middle of the winter in Alaska, Antarctica, on the moon. On the moon, Auburn fans are going to find a way to get there. I remember this was a little bit before Auburn was relevant in basketball. They weren't bad, but they just weren't as relevant as they are now. They were kind of coming off the heels of the Chris Porter era. They took on Grambling in Von Braun Arena in Huntsville. This is a preseason game. I remember it being kind of cold. It was middle of December, and when I tell you I was there, I just so happened to be in town and decided to go. I was in there visiting a friend. I was like, I decided to go. So we went, and when I tell you, you would have thought that Auburn, this was an NCAA tournament appearance for the Tigers. It just kind of continued to show me how dedicated the Auburn fan base really is, which is absolutely phenomenal. Which is why I have no doubt, and which is why Auburn, as a hadn't had a winning season since 2020, while they still generate $118 million in revenue. And that's why, according to a recent little study that, people talk about, if this was a NFL franchise, how they do it based on, the players that are getting paid or whatever. If you wanted to buy the Auburn Tigers, if they were an NFL franchise, now this could not be true. I thought it was kind of outlandish, but just for Auburn to be kind of in that number, I was like, well, maybe they might be onto something. It'll cost you $1 billion to buy Auburn. I don't believe it, but that's what was out there. So, but anyway, Gus Malzahn has now gone from Arkansas State to Auburn as a head coach. He was actually an offensive coordinator at Auburn in 2010, and we're still talking about the ACC media days. And Norvell, the coach for Florida State, of course he's going to get on there, and he's going to say some things that are encouraging to the fan base. And what he had to say was, hey, look, we got us an offensive coordinator in Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn he didn't say this precisely, but Gus Malzahn has a track record. He's been a head coach before. And I'm saying this, he's been a head coach before. He's been a high-level performing offensive coordinator. And he's pretty much won to some degree. And won, I mean winning games. He's pretty much had winning experiences in most of the places that he has gone to. I know he was very excited about going to University of Central Florida after, Auburn is a hard place to, I would imagine, I'm a fan, I'm an alumnus of Auburn. Auburn's a hard place to coach, to be a leader. And it seems like it's kind of getting a little bit easier because you have access to get some of the resources that you need to satisfy the fan base, to satisfy the expectation. But I would say during, excuse me, during Gus Malzahn's tenure, maybe not so much. And Mike Norvell went on to say, Florida State's head coach went on to say, okay, we have Gus Malzahn. The last time Gus Malzahn was an offensive coordinator, he won a national championship. Now, what's the implication here if you're just on the outside looking in? Um, you're excited about, or you want to get excited about Florida State football. Hey, we got a national champion offensive coordinator. Incredible. Incredible. Here's my only issue with a statement like that, especially a statement like that, and you're expecting your fan base to get a little buy-in off of the offensive coordinator that was a national champion 14 years ago. What what worked and what was relevant in 2010, even 2014. As a matter of fact, Gus Malzahn as an offensive coordinator or an offensive play caller or an offensive guru, that kind of went out the door after the 2013 national championship appearance. No longer could a team rely heavily on an RPO concept. It got back to, hey, you got to line up, you got to out scheme, you got to out talent the team in front of you. You can't, you just can't go off of deception anymore. You can't create mismatches because you don't allow the opposing defense to make the proper swaps to match up with you. And next thing you know, in the Alabama game in 2013, you have Nick Marshall just racing down the football field because Alabama can't get lined up. And even if they did get lined up, they don't have the right personnel package in place to stop that play. But what happened the next year? The next year, you notice a change in Auburn's offense. You notice that the offense wasn't as explosive. One, they lost Trey Mason as their running back. Two, the offensive line wasn't quite as good. They lost a few guys. The offensive line wasn't quite as good. The wide receiver core was kind of compatible to what they already had, but you notice a drop-off in that explosiveness. And now you got to play real football. Not saying that it wasn't real before, because it was within the rules. But Gus Malzahn, as an offensive coordinator in 2010, he wasn't even the same offensive coordinator 4 years later, or the same offensive guru 4 years later after that mastermind result in the national championship game in 2010. As a matter of fact, now here's a very unpopular opinion. In that 2010 instance, I think teams started to figure out Auburn. They made Auburn a little one-dimensional. I'm not saying Cam Newton wasn't great, because God doggone it, he was. He was a great football player. He was a great athlete. He and a couple of others, their talent and their abilities pushed this team to be way more than they would have been otherwise. Otherwise, you're talking about and here's the caveat to that, which I'm gonna get to in a second. You're talking about a 6-6 team at best, in my honest opinion, with the talent to competition ratio, maybe 6-6. And here's the problem with that: the presence of Cam Newton, the presence of Nick Fairley, the presence of a couple of other guys on that team still put Auburn in a compromised position to where the ball in some games just bounced the right way. You know what I mean? You're talking about a team that still, when you talk about X's and O's and you talk about how games were won, you're still talking about a 7-5 maybe season. Could have been a little worse. Could have actually been 6-6. But I digress because we're talking about the ACC, Mike Norvell. He's trying to get Florida State back on track. He's trying to get the fan base on board. And he says that, hey, you guys, don't worry. We got a national championship offensive coordinator. And we feel that this is the guy that's going to take us to the promised land, just like UCF felt like it. Right? Just like Auburn, the hell, he did take him to the promised land, but it's based on, actually, it's based on talent that he had because he wasn't that far removed from Auburn. He could have been a part of 2 national championships at Auburn. You know, a couple of, plays away from doing that. But what do y'all think, though? I mean, to say that, I just think with these media days, there's been a lot of mindless concepts, outdated concepts that people are just accepting. And I just don't think using Gus Malzahn, his tenure as an offensive coordinator, which was many generations of football ago, I'm not sure. As a matter of fact, this statement by Mike Norvell has actually led to a catalyst in me to want to see how this turns out. What does a Gus Malzahn offense look like? I mean, a total Gus Malzahn run, a Gus Malzahn recruited offense in 2025. What does that look like? Has he learned how to recruit offensive linemen? Right? Let's just assume that he wants to do the RPO thing. Does he have the quarterback in mind to do it? No, I have not looked up their recruiting numbers. But does he have all of those things in place? Does he have what is absolutely needed in college football now? Does he have a really good running back? Or does he have 2? Also, what does the wide receiver concept look like? You know, it can't be Ricardo Lewis now. You got to have somebody a little bit more dynamic than that. It can't be Duke Williams, that'll get you some 50-50 balls here and there. It's got to be a guy that's going to create some separation, that's going to, I mean, if you guard this guy the wrong way, he's going to the house. That's what's going to work. Here's the thing. Gus Malzahn did revolutionize teams, in my opinion, to want to play a little bit differently on defense. Back when Gus Malzahn was the man, linebackers were slow. So the quarterback could get to that corner. Defensive linemen were not quite as athletic as they are now. They didn't have the buck thing going on for the most part. The things were kind of traditional. So Gus was ahead of his time, but defenses caught back up. A few years later, now you have linebackers that are just as fast as the DBs were at the time when Gus was doing this. And now it's a situation where nobody's scared of a dual threat quarterback. Yeah, it can work, but you can't premise your game on that. Now, a quarterback that has the ability to run, I think that's incredible. That adds dimensions to it, but that can't be your one dimension. All right, so that's my time here. Go ahead and like the video. My name is Kennard Vernon Stewart. I go by Vernon Speak Sports Auburn, and also this is the Auburn Fanatics podcast. Like the video, share the video, leave an impression, leave a comment. I just really want to know what y'all think about this comment that Mike Norvell made. That he's feeling good about his national championship offensive coordinator from 2010. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger. Thank you guys for listening. War Eagle.